Okay, I'm here today with Dr. Chuck Yates. I have known Chuck Yates since about 1977, so I've known him just about as long as I've known anybody. And I wanted to talk to Chuck about one very important thing, but before we get to that, first, Chuck, why don't you tell us who you are and what you do?
Well, thanks for having me here today. I am an MD. I'm a neurologist, so I'm a surgeon who works on problems of the skull base, mostly involving your hearing, but sometimes using the side of the skull as a way to get to tumors that are at your brainstem, particularly called vestibular schwannomas. So I do surgeries and treatment of people who have hearing loss and facial nerve problems and some other cranial base issues.
You help restore hearing?
Yeah, a lot of the time. Usually when I'm restoring hearing, that may be a surgery with when we place like a cochlear implant, or sometimes different surgeries to work on the eardrum and the little bones of hearing and things like that. So, yep. Sometimes not every disease process I work with we're able to restore hearing, but that's the goal of a lot of the disease processes. A lot of times it's just to preserve what you have as well.
And do you kind of specialize in one of these operations for children? Is that correct?
In particular, I do a lot of operations in with a cochlear implant operation for kids. Generally, that's anywhere from 6 months of age on. That's generally kids who are born without any hearing, where their families want them to acquire auditory oral spoken language.
Hmm. So it's I like to tell people it's a you do something that's actually useful, You- right?
Well, it depends on who's getting use out of it, but yeah.
Um, this how long does one of these operations generally last? Where you the one where you put in the implant?
So the cochlear implant's usually about a 2-hour operation, although sometimes in younger children we might do both ears at the same time. So then that's a 4-hour general anesthetic for that child because
Uh,
of having two ears.
yeah. General anesthetic, so you don't knock them out.
Uh, General anesthetic means you're completely out,
Oh,
as opposed to sedation where you're kind of in like it's like a twilight type of sedation. No, they're completely out for my procedures.
oh, okay. See, so that we can already tell that my degree is in English, so I know almost nothing about medicine. So when you say general anesthetic, I need to be corrected. All right, well, let's get into what I really want to talk about today. Since you work on ears and the skull, obviously you're the most qualified person to discuss viruses. I'm sort of joking, but I wanted to do this interview for the skeptics out there. There are anti-vaccine people with regards to COVID who are just anti-vaccine. They're going to be anti-vaccine no matter what. But there's a lot of people who look at this vaccine and this whole situation. They say, well, we didn't really spend a lot of time testing this vaccine beyond the testing that's going on in the actual world right now. So I wonder, first thing, if you could, to the best of your ability, could you explain exactly what this vaccine is and how it works and how it's expected to protect someone from catching a severe case of COVID?
Well, to start off with, yes, you hit the nail on the head that my primary part of my practice is not virology. I'm not an infectious disease specialist. However, there's some basic principles of molecular biology that are being used in these vaccines that have some fascinating implications. There are basically three different vaccines being used in the U.S. They're the ones from Pfizer and from Moderna, and these are two different types of vaccines that are a new vaccine compared to anything that's ever been used before. Because what they use is something called mRNA. mRNA is something that your body uses every time your body makes a protein. You use your own genetic code, DNA, to copy mRNA, and then the mRNA gets copied into becoming a protein. So the mRNA in these vaccinations is coded for the spike protein, which is part of the exterior surface of the coronavirus, so that when you inject this mRNA into your cells, you produce some of the spike protein for a brief period, and your body then can create antibodies, the kind of core of your immune reaction to it. The key thing with those two vaccines is that the mRNA doesn't last long enough in your body on an initial injection to create enough of an immune response. So you need two injections of those vaccines to be fully protected against the coronavirus. Then there's a third vaccine made by Johnson and Johnson, which is more of a traditional, just has broken down portions of the spike protein as part of it, so you get one shot from that. But all of them, like any other vaccine, they expose you to a little bit of what is a novel virus so that your body has a way to use your own immune system to respond to it. Does that help?
Yeah, well, so one of the things I hear about I had not heard that the Johnson and Johnson was more traditional, because one of my questions is, why aren't we just doing what we normally do with a vaccine, which is put a little bit of the disease into the body so that the immune system comes and recognizes it? I mean, that's my basic understanding of a vaccine. I've had most vaccines you're supposed to have. So I'm just curious why did we make this change? Why did we? Because from what I've been told, this is a new kind of vaccine.
Mm-hmm.
And what about this virus made us go in this direction?
You know, I can't give you an accurate answer to that, other than to say that the the mRNA type of vaccine can be a way that we can use a lot of what we understand about molecular biology. If we have the code of a gene, that can basically be inserted. If you think of the way you create this vaccine as having a certain code that has in the middle of it, you just have the mRNA of whatever it is that you want to develop immunity to. You can take anything and you can plug it into that cassette and have it developed very quickly. So it's a faster way to produce that type of immune response, because you can basically present that protein in your own body quickly. Up until the COVID vaccine, the shortest time it ever took to make a vaccine was, I believe it was the pertussis virus, and it was and I think it took 4 years to basically go from taking actually, I'm not even sure if it was a virus or not, but going from taking the organism, growing it up in like chicken embryos, and kind of getting it so that you could make it so that it didn't give you the disease, and kind of going through generation after generation to have it produce the same type of immune response but not be toxic enough to make you sick. And so basically, one of the reasons is that it took a lot less time to develop it, because you didn't have to basically detoxify a virus. Now, not every other vaccine is a live virus that you're getting. Um, I For instance, there are even two different polio vaccines. There's one that's a live virus and one that is just parts of the virus that you respond to. But generally, you build a better immune response to those some of those live viruses. So there's favorable parts to them.
Is this the future of vaccines? Is that what we're seeing here? Is this simply, in other words, has science has just evolved to a point where we think now this is the way to go with vaccines?
It may be because you don't wind up having, other elements involved. If it, like whenever you get, and what I mean by other elements is some of the collateral reactions. So every time you get certain vaccines, one of the questions you get asked is, do you have an egg allergy? That's because a lot of them have been developed with other organisms, and they have like parts of egg or chicken or something else in them. I'm not saying that they, cut up little chicken McNuggets and dump them into your body, but you can develop cross reactivity because of those other things that are in the vaccine, specifically an egg allergy. So one factor is it makes a cleaner vaccine if you're not having these other antigens, other things for your body to react to in it. The idea of using mRNA for a vaccine is actually a lot more interesting and complex, because it could be also a window of ways to do like immunotherapies for certain types of cancer. So maybe you have like, maybe this is a way to introduce something that's on the outside of a melanoma so that you build up a better immune response in the body. And you might even be able to do it quick enough to have it be specific to an individual's type of cancer. So this type of technology is not necessarily one of convenience. It could be a great advance for multiple types of medicine beyond just infectious disease. It could include treatment of cancers, bacterial diseases, even brain diseases, maybe autoimmune diseases. Who knows? I mean, it's a different paradigm.
Will this be the primary technique going forward for creating vaccines?
I can't answer that accurately because I'm not involved in creating vaccines. I would say that I would go so far. I mean, I don't think that anybody's going to take, for instance, the measles, mumps, rubella vaccine that children get in the first several years of life. I don't think people are going to go back, deconstruct that, and make it a different type of vaccine, because you already have something that's successful and effective. And like any other decision made in medicine as a whole, you know, people want something to, first be safe and then to be effective. And if you can be both of those things, then it will be the answer in those situations when the data bears it out. But it can be a way to develop some of these things in a faster way, rather than taking 4 years before you can even test whether or not they're safe or effective.
Okay, well, let's get into some of the theories I hear put forth by um, I don't want to call them anti-vaxxers. I don't know. I think there are a lot of different people who have different reasons for not wanting to take the vaccine. But I get people sending me articles and lectures and all sorts of things. So let's start with the mRNA. There are people out there who believe that tampering with the DNA in this way is somehow going to cause some sort of long-term damage. The most, should I say, hyperbolic? I don't know. The most histrionic thing I've heard somebody say is that it's basically creating humans 2.0. If you can you explain why that's either wrong or misguided or?
Well, yeah, it's pretty misguided from the standpoint that mRNA just doesn't last that long. I mean, part of the reason is the proof of how the vaccine is being used. The fact that in a single dose, it doesn't last long enough to give you an adequate immune response, and you need a second dose of the vaccine to produce an adequate immune response would suggest that maybe it's something that's not a permanent change in a human being. The other thing is that there is something that's basically the central dogma of molecular biology is that you go from DNA to RNA, then to proteins. And it is hard to have something that takes mRNA and incorporates that into DNA and then makes a long-term change. And to do that, there has been at least 30 years of attempts at gene therapy on known diseases to try to fix simple single enzymes that cause potentially fatal mutations in people. And we haven't come up with the technology to do that to fix a horrible disease process. So I don't know how we would accidentally figure that out by injecting mRNA for a virus.
Well, and some people then say that's why we need boosters. You're saying because the mRNA goes away, right?
Correct.
So we
Well,
need.
there are two parts of that. I mean, yes, you do. The mRNA doesn't last long enough in your body to keep making protein to keep you with a robust immune response. So then, to get, I mean, it's not an additional booster. The first and second shot for both the Pfizer and Moderna is what it requires to have you be immunologically protected. And then now we are having a discussion because of the Delta variant going around. Well, it's more than a discussion. It's going to happen that people are going to get a booster starting in September across the U.S. So that the vaccinated folks are less likely to get Delta variant and have the low-grade disease that they're expected to get with that.
Will there be needs for more boosters after that? After this?
Well, so that depends. Um, a a virus, especially a pandemic level virus, is in a constant state of evolution. And so if you have basically created a vaccine that works against the spike protein, in that evolution of the virus, if the virus changes something in its spike protein that is going to make it not recognized by vaccination, then the vaccinations will no longer be any good. The Delta variant is not a big change in the spike protein. That's why the vaccinations still work for it, but that is, certainly a possibility if you have further genetic drift of the virus to change that spike protein antigen to something that is not recognized, then you may need a totally different shot. It kind of depends on how long the virus keeps going through. I mean, the analogy would be the influenza virus, where you have a shot every year because there are two factors of that. It's called the H and the A, the hemagglutinin, or sorry, the H and the N, the hemagglutinin and the neuraminidase, that those change. So a few years ago, we had H1N1, and the virus, the vaccine against the virus has to kind of anticipate what will be the dominant H and N every year, and it changes every year because the virus changes in its host population, which is humans. So you could get to a situation like that. I mean, the ideal would be you get enough people either vaccinated or have gotten the disease and survived it that you don't have to that it doesn't have a population of people it can fester in and change and drift into something else. But we are clearly not in that position right now.
So what do you say to people who say, well, if this vaccine might ultimately prove ineffective, why should I get it?
Well, because it's effective now. I mean, well, so let's be honest about the reality here. I mean, the first of all, I'm not going to argue with people to put or not put something in their bodies. I think I do respect an autonomy of decision. However, I think that when I can make a decision about taking someone to surgery and taking out a tumor, it's a decision that's based on what is the benefit of what that thing is going to do to you versus the risk of that intervention. There is no intervention that doesn't have some risk. I mean, even taking an aspirin a day or changing your diet to something that may be better for your health may have some risk to you, right? I mean, so and I don't think that the medical community is telling anybody that there is no risk, but the risk of the vaccine is very low. And currently, right now in the United States, um, we're seeing a epidemic of the unvaccinated. So the Delta variant in hospitals is basically people who are in the situation in the ICUs are all unvaccinated. People who are dying are the majority of them are people who are unvaccinated. I mean, overwhelmingly majority, like better than 95 to 99% at this point. So the vaccine protects you from both death and hospitalization, even though you may still be able to get COVID at this point. So the benefit of protecting you from those things versus the very low risk of the vaccine is why I would encourage people to take it.
Yeah, I keep hearing that they're overwhelmingly unvaccinated, but isn't that kind of logical, regardless?
Yeah. Yeah. So then wouldn't it be logical to accept a vaccine if you didn't want to get a specific disease that might kill you?
Well, yes. What is the survival? Do you know what the survival rate is of? We know that COVID is between 97 and 99%, but I haven't seen the numbers for Delta. The
You
gen-
know, I don't know an accurate number of that.
do you know those who have had the disease and have antibodies, natural antibodies, are they more or less protected than the vaccinated?
So I have not personally seen a study that answers that question. I don't think I mean, so if you have had a disease, you have developed an immune response to it. And so it is protective of you having had the disease, but I don't know any comparison of having had COVID to the vaccination.
Okay. Well, you talked about, you said, oh, no, nothing is 100% risk-free. Can you tell us, if possible, uh, what are the genuine, not the, conspiracy theory risks? What are the genuine risks of taking the vaccine?
I mean, a number of people will feel tired. You may have like a fever, headache, runny nose, cough for about a day afterwards, depending on first or second dose. There have been very, very uncommon reports, and I've seen in my practice even a few people who have had hearing loss that may be nerve related after getting the vaccine, but we don't know if that if that number is directly due to receiving the vaccine or if it's the same as the baseline of what we normally see with what's called a sudden sensorineural hearing loss. The problem is right now that so many people are also getting the vaccine, it's hard to be able to differentiate some of these normal baseline thing from being a cause related to the vaccine versus a normal blip in the microverse in the background.
Fuck, I forgot what I was going to say. That kind of threw
I
me,
have that all the time.
Yeah, I haven't heard that about the hearing, so that threw me a little bit. But
Well,
yeah, go ahead.
I should tell you that, like, that's, I've seen a couple people in my practice who think that they've had that. I don't know, but I do believe that their timing was, within weeks of having the vaccine. The problem is I see a number of people with that scenario year round who just have sudden, what we call sudden sensorineural or hearing losses, that where your hearing goes away in one ear and stays away. So, that's probably unique to my practice that I've even seen those people, and certainly not generalizable to like the whole, situation with the vaccines. So it probably should be edited out.
Well, no, I think it's good to the idea here is to get information out from. I hear a lot of information coming from a lot of people that I don't think are in any way qualified. Whereas you attended medical school, and I know for a fact, because I know you, that you know a lot about science and whatnot. I am a lowly writer. I know jack shit unless I'm researching for a writing project, and then I research exactly what I need to know. So I don't think it's a bad idea to get that out there. What about any lethal? Are there any numbers with respect to anybody having a lethal reaction to the vaccine?
Uh, I don't know those numbers. I think the CDC publicly shares those, but I actually don't know what those are.
Okay. One of the more Go ahead.
Needless to say, all I do know is those numbers are very low if they actually exist.
Right, and I guess it would be a good idea to kind of look and see if there's any similarities between the people who are dying. What do they have, or commonalities? Hopefully, it's not writers. The more outrageous things I've heard a couple of outrageous things. One guy started a commentary saying that everybody who's gotten the vaccine will be dead within 5 years, because he says this thing is putting some sort of time bomb in your genetic code.
Yeah.
It's by the end of his spiel, he was on to the other theories about sterilization and whatnot. So when I see somebody throwing anything against the wall there, I know this person, probably shouldn't take them seriously. But I saw a woman, I believe she's a professor or a scientist or something from Spain, who said she got a hold of a tube of the Pfizer vaccine and found 95% of some toxic substance. You on? She said it's some kind of thing. Yeah. It's some kind of gasoline or something.
No. Let me.
All right, we'll edit this, this part. She and I
No, I
watched
think it's good.
Graphene what? It's 2 words, like graphene sulfide or something. Anyway, something graphene.
Mhm.
Said it was like 95% was that.
That's a graphene. That's it.
All right.
Graphene.
And of course, if you go and you Google it, it's been debunked by fact checkers, but skeptics naturally don't believe fact checkers. you know.
Right. Well,
Uh,
because it's a conspiracy, right? And conspiracy is inherently something where you don't have proof of.
where you don't have what?
Proof. That's why it's a conspiracy. There's no factual evidence that a conspiracy actually occurs.
Well, this woman had her paper published in Spain.
Uh-huh.
I don't have the information. I'll try to put a link in the details below this video. But um, it's been debunked, of course, because I'm sure that the people in charge think that it's in the public interest to debunk anything like that. Plus, if I'm not mistaken, would the Pfizer vaccine in Spain be the same as the Pfizer vaccine that we're getting in the United States, or would it be something else?
I would assume that it is the same.
Ah, okay.
I
Is
would
there?
assume.
Mhm.
Well, I wanted to answer. If it's hard to verify scientific data that isn't in front of me or you, whether or not it's true. But certainly most people's reaction hasn't been consistent with like an acute toxicity type of reaction, which you would kind of suspect if something had something that was 95% toxic. But I also wanted to address the the person who was discussing the fact that the um, uh, the mRNA could get into the DNA. Again, that's the a key point about that is again that central dogma of biology. Unless you have an enzyme called a reverse transcriptase, which takes RNA and makes it into DNA, and then it has to get into your code, and that's only in the cells that are locally affected. Like it's really hard to do this through an entire body. It's hard to do it like to change the DNA in like a tumor itself, like in a small area. Like people have done research on this for a long time. I mean, so the number of things that would have to go on, you'd have to have like some type of active enzyme that would be able to take RNA and put it into DNA in cells, and then all these cells, the DNA in your cells split off from one cell at the beginning when you were conceived, and it became millions and millions and billions of cells in your body. Oh, sorry, millions. Actually, I was off on the order of magnitude, but nonetheless, like just you can't change every single one in every single cell in the body's DNA just by a little bit of mRNA in one location. It's just impossible for it to work like that. There's been a whole lot of attempts at doing gene therapies and other things that way, and had them just not work because it's a lot more complicated than that.
Okay, so the notion that this vaccine is going to alter your DNA is complete horse pucky. Is that what you're telling me?
It is complete horse pucky.
Hmm. You're absolutely confident of that? I
Um,
noticed you started growing a third ear since you got the vaccine. I've studied. So it's just complete
well,
nonsense.
yes. I mean, the favorite thing I've heard is I had a colleague who was seeing he's a pulmonologist, and he was seeing a patient who was a pastor, so in charge of a Midwestern church, who had some lung problems, didn't have COVID at the time, but he asked if he was going to get the vaccine, and he said, no, I'm not, because I know that if you get the vaccine, it takes out the part of your brain that believes in God, and I'm not going to let that happen to me. And so, people have attributed many fears to this vaccine that I find, I think probably that area of your body may not rest in your brain. It may rest someplace else, maybe in an undefinable soul. But I don't think that we are changing that level of our humanity by protecting us from a disease that's probably going to kill another 100,000 of the non-vaccinated in the next 3 to 4 months. And at this point, the additional plug for it is that a lot of people who are dying of disease right now because they didn't get are dying because they didn't get the vaccine. It's not that, we haven't made enough strides to figure out how to cure the severe lung problems when people have the lung diseases that kill them from COVID. We've made some improvements in treatment of COVID, but nothing as profound to prevent death and hospitalization as the vaccine. And like anything else, there are some people who may not be able to get it because of an allergy or immune suppression or something like that. But it is an unfortunate big deal that there are some people who are currently dying who otherwise that is based on a choice. And it may, unfortunately, from some of the things you've discussed, be based on misinformation. People are certainly entitled to their choices. I won't take away choice from people, but the misinformation guiding some of those choices is pretty disappointing.
Well, that kind of brings me to where we're at in society now, where an awful lot of vaccinated people that I'm related to actually, believe they look very much, they look down on people who are not getting the vaccine, speak of them as less than human. And have even someone I'm related to has even said they should be isolated from the rest of society. Is this healthy?
No, I don't think we need currently have any evidence that we should stratify our culture based on vaccination status.
But yeah, go ahead.
Well, and I would say I mean, one of the unhealthy things about, I think in politics and science, in a whole lot of different areas, is that we have crossed different lines where some of the times we want so hard to believe something that our belief will interfere with the actual data in front of us. And if you are going to be someone who is an empiricist who believes that there's certain amount of things that you can see in the world and make decisions based on that evidence, then sometimes belief it shouldn't take over that data in front of you. um, Again, this is not a criticism of belief system as in your religious spiritual beliefs, or your belief as to whether or not you're a good guy or not, or a good gal. Those are very different from whether or not you believe that this vaccine does a whole lot of things that it doesn't, or if you don't even believe that this virus exists, that's just been produced by the political structure of this country to ramp up a lot of discord or whatever. I think it's been fascinating that belief trumps a lot of people's assessment of data and logic.
Mm-hmm. This vaccine was produced rather quickly. Would you agree with that?
I would agree.
Why did that happen? What made that possible?
Well, probably the technique by which you were making the vaccine. Having the thing that concerns people about having the mRNA is, again, it was a technique that had never been able to be used before because the technology simply didn't exist. And so instead of trying to basically inactivate a virus over multiple passages and generations of it, you were able just to take a part of the protein and use the mRNA to be able to have the body produce that spike protein and develop an immune response. So a big reason is that. A second reason is that they initially received emergency use authorization because there is a huge need to get the vaccine out there, so long as it, proved to be safe and effective. The FDA has a lot of red tape, and they did. The Trump administration, I believe, actually took down a lot of the barriers that made that possible.
Yeah.
I
So
mean, in a good way.
yeah, you said that you said the magic word that I was trying to get to, which is Trump, who it seems like it's largely his supporters. Not completely. There's a very wide range of people who don't want to take the vaccine. But it seems like an awful lot are Trump supporters, and not in the government, but just the regular working class people who voted for Trump because they thought he would go to DC and get rid of all the filthy rich shitheads who are fucking up our country. Pardon my French. Isn't that the angle that should be taken now to get those people to take the vaccine? Is, hey, your guy made sure that this got through?
Yeah, and that guy took the vaccine too, by the way. I mean,
Yeah.
so, well, yeah. I mean, I think that would be a good strategy. I mean, it's hard for me to know exactly what other people think, and how to how to fix that. I mean, there are things I'm sure that I would support that those people believe, and things that I disagree with. But I, the fact that it did go through during that administration, um, and the part of the fact that it came through the FDA quickly was facilitated by the Trump administration, and I think for good reasons. Again, I think it saved a lot of lives in the U.S. and will around the world. Um, I think I don't understand why there's still such a resistance from people who support Donald Trump. I mean, he actually has been telling people, I guess, publicly to get the vaccine. So.
Yeah, I don't know. I try not to watch too much news, so I don't know. And the other thing that I'm seeing and hearing about is that a great number of non-white communities are resistant to taking a number of people in those communities, a great number. For instance, in the black community, the knowledge of was it the Tuskegee experiments is still, people know about that, and so they hear this. What would you say to those communities to maybe alleviate any fears of this vaccine?
I mean, look at your neighbors who have gotten it and aren't getting sick, and look at your neighbors who haven't gotten it and are getting sick. I mean, I think at this point we're getting to that point again. I mean, having a healthy uh, a healthy lack of belief for everything authority does, I think, is a good thing for society. And unfortunately, these are populations that have been treated horribly within the society. And the Tuskegee experiment specifically was a group of African American people who were basically not treated for known syphilis to see what the natural history of the disease was. I mean, so the in the modern era of medical research, I mean, obviously that is taught to everybody who does biomedical research, and it is central to having the autonomy, respect for persons, and informed consent for people who are even involved in research studies. So, it is hard. It's hard. You can't change the history. You can only change the present, and hopefully some of the public knowledge of some of those horrible abuses has made biomedical research more ethical across the board. Maybe in 20 years we look back and think differently about how we treat currently some research populations. Maybe not. But hopefully we're always taking what data we have and getting better about it. But I don't have a good answer for the populations that have been mistrustful for good reasons, other than to say that there has hopefully been a considerable amount of effort to improve access to care for a lot of populations by the medical community in this country.
Does Pfizer and Moderna and Johnson & Johnson, do they make the ingredients of their vaccines publicly available that you know of?
I don't know accurately, to be honest, but I think that I think that they do. I'm going to say that I think that they have to give pretty detailed information to the regulatory governments wherever they take those vaccines, but I don't know the details of how much they have to.
Okay. Well, I will, for my many fans out there watching this channel, I will look that up and I will put the links in the description down below. I think that we have bugged Dr. Yates here enough about this, and I don't know. It's a tough world we live in. That's all I'll say. All right, Chuck. Well, thanks for talking to us today. And hopefully those of you who are maybe on the fence, this will help you make a decision. And maybe sometime in the future, we'll talk to Chuck again.
Pleasure. Thank you for having me.